Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Hassett Sabbath Fellowship. Thank you for joining us. We're virtual only. We're based out of St. Paul, Minnesota. The phone number does work if you'd like to contact us. We don't do the news. There are great people doing the news today. John Haller, I just watched him earlier. We do the philosophy of eschatology. We do what you need to know, what's prophetic about it. What does the Bible actually say? We are trying to be as literal as possible with Revelation. So what's your reality in that and our existence? So we solve, say in this case, Revelation 12, who is the man child. And so once again, some of the other people do the news stories. What I'm trying to relate to you, and I hope that comes through today, is that this is literally true. The Bible is literally true. And if you have a problem with a chapter, a verse, a whatever else it is, that's probably your problem, not God's problem. So I wouldn't naturally say it's figurative, okay? And that'll be my big bad word today. All right, so let's dig into it. Revelation 12 talks about the man child, and I'm saying that is directly related to Genesis 49, 9 through 11. So Judah is a lion's cub. My son, you stand over the prey. He crouches down and stretches like a lion, like a lioness. Who dares to provoke him? The scepter, okay, look at that word carefully, the scepter. You're going to see that a lot today. Will not pass from Judah, nor the ruler's staff, same basic word as the scepter, from between his legs, until he comes to whom obedience belongs, and it is he whom the peoples will obey. Tying his donkey to the vine, his donkey's colt to the choice grapevine, he washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. Okay, so that's a reference to Isaiah 63 and Yeshua coming out of Edom, Esau's territory. He has stomped down on the people that wanted to kill his people off. And so what I'm arguing is it is Yeshua, no doubt about it, but it's also a Davidic king because King David was not Yeshua. He was King David. And King David sinned like a man would sin. Yeshua didn't sin. So what I want you to see is the scepter and how it passes through from prophecy to prophecy to prophecy. So we'll see that. And the kingship passes through. And it can't just be Yeshua because we'll show you in Ezekiel 45 verse that'll kind of prove that there's another man like a King David that will rule alongside him. So once again, my big problem today is figurative language. I took a theology class in college. I won't state where I went to college, but the professor didn't believe in God, didn't believe in the resurrection, and I got into an argument with him, and I got, I think, an F for my paper, a D or whatever else, and and I was pretty good at the Bible, guys, okay? And I was getting coached by my father too, who was absolutely brilliant, and so he didn't like how I phrased things because I believe in the resurrection. Why would I not be literal on that and literal on a lot of things in the Bible? And being figurative is just wimpy. I mean, that is what wusses do, and I don't respect wusses. So, yeah, we'll talk about that today because Revelation 12 is a tough one, okay? So let's do literal and figurative. The wife is saying the car is not starting. The dashboard shows the sign of a person sitting on the toilet. That is a figurative phrase for this situation because the husband says, send me a picture, and he looks at it, and it looks like a person sitting on the toilet, but it's really -4, which is my temperature outside right now. I walked my 4 miles today, and I froze, and I wore 2 pairs of long johns in addition to sweats, pants, and I think 4 or 5 shirts or sweaters or whatever. And, and I froze out there today because the wind is nasty. But I got my walks in. And I'm from Minnesota, so I have to be the tough guy. And I'm not figurative. I literally walked today. So should we take the Bible literally? You know, the fish and Noah and being spat up on the shore. Yes, yes. The goal is to take it literally. The goal is, okay, monsters in the Bible. Is it a credible source? Either that or throw the whole Bible out and go into disbelief as we go into the Revelation times. Oh, that's going to be a happy time for you. No. There are some metaphors in there. Song of Solomon is obviously metaphorical, but there is an end times passage, or there are passages within Song of Solomon that really lead to a lot. So Yeah, there's in Proverbs, but there's a lot of information in Proverbs that you probably should read. So, the book of Revelation, it is literal. If you can't solve it, it's not God's fault, it's your fault. Okay, once again, what do? We look at the Bible, we look at prophecy, we look at the news. In this case, I'm saying that we're going to have another King David show up at some point in time, and he's going to be the man child. And we do the philosophy of the end of days. So, yes, Yeshua will be here, but we will also have a King David. Not everything is done by Yeshua, and I'll show you just a tiny little verse from Ezekiel that helps to prove that point, in addition to Revelation 12. So I went out and listened to a couple of videos on this, and generally the thought is Revelation 12:1 is the physical Jesus? It doesn't really make sense. Is the Mother Mary Israel the church? It's always got to be the church because the church doesn't think about anything other than the church, and they don't really want to think about the Jews. The problem is the Bible's all written about the Jews, okay? And the Jews were the believers in, and it's not the church, it's the assembly, it's the ecclesia, which would be the believers. So the Jews are part of that too, even in the first century, definitely. So number one point with Revelation 12 is it has to be a male, but it has to be a Jewish male because it has to have the scepter coming through from Genesis 49. That male child will be born, and so there will be a birth at some point in time. He will rule as a king. He will be caught up to heaven. And Yeshua does rule, but there will be a physical human being ruling alongside him. Now, the guy that I cited for these particular quotes, and I added to it obviously, is John Wurtzema. Nice guy, he's a rapture guy, so he's got his opinions, and he's always going to go to church and things like that. And so I would argue that it is more about the assembly, which turns into the individuals, and the individual leader would be here in addition to Yeshua. I'm not a figurative guy, and we're going to push hard as we move forward. Things are going to be more literal from Revelation and not figurative. So, John did a nice enough job. I watched his video and some other videos. I liked his the most because he's in the Greek, at least. He's not a Greek expert, but he understands the Greek. So once again, he said we can take things literally and figuratively. So the problem is he was going back and forth constantly because he didn't understand certain things. He doesn't understand Jewish concepts that well. I don't think he cares about Jewish concepts, but he's a nice enough fellow, And so metaphors on the lower left-hand side here. An icy stare. Well, there's probably no ice involved, but he didn't make it. That's a euphemism, as free as a bird. Well, that's a simile. And an idiom is a piece of cake, And so easy as a piece of cake. Okay, fine. So the point is that where I agree with him is some of this is literal, and I hope it's all literal. And then he also said it's future. It's in the middle of Daniel's final week. And so I agree with him on that. But the problem is, once again, John likes to parse things out. So he'll say, well, that's literal, that's figurative, and it's all subjective for him. And I don't really appreciate that. And I don't want to drop a personal opinion into the Bible. So the goal is to try to figure out how much of it is literal. And if it doesn't seem literal to you, then wait. It might become literal next week. So let's jump in, and I'll give a few little opinions on the side as I'm reading this, because that's what I tend to do. So stick with me. This is the literal text of Revelation 12, 1 through 6. And keep in mind also the context behind this is war 4 times. So this is setting up for war, 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 war. Okay, so a great sign was seen in heaven, and a woman arrayed with the sun. And keep in mind, you see this woman arrayed with the sun every year at Rosh Hashana. That's where she is. Virgo is reclining in the fall around that time. She'll have the moon under her feet every fall, and her head a crown of 12 stars. Well, you'll see that every fall. As being with child, she doth cry out. Okay, so what do I think that means? That is going to be Israel. The woman is Israel, and I'll try to prove that to you, especially Zion specifically. And then the child is going to be a child, something up in the sky that will look like a child is being birthed. So it'll probably pop out of that particular area of the Virgo. But you'll also see a birth on the earth. And it'll be very interesting to watch. And we're told by Luke 21:25 that you'll see some interesting signs in the heaven as we move forward. So she's travailing in pain to bring forth. And there was seen another sign in the heaven, and lo, a great red dragon. We can take that literally. That's Satan. We know Satan exists, okay? We don't know exactly what the 7 heads and the 10 horns are, but we know that Satan exists. We'll figure out the 7 heads and 10 horns when we get to Revelation 17. And upon his head, 7 diadems, crowns, and his tail drew a third of the stars of heaven, and he cast them to the earth. And the dragon did stand before the woman. So basically, I'm saying this is real, that at some point in time, a third of the stars, which could be literally stars, but also you will see. Okay, so there's a time in Revelation, I'm sure I didn't look up the verse exactly, but you'll see a third of the stars don't give their light. And so there will occur at some point in time, and it could line up with this exact event, because this is about the midpoint of the Great Tribulation. So that works, okay? But the other point is that it's probably going to be fallen angels coming down to earth with the Satan, okay? He's going to draw a third of the stars of heaven. So angels will fall and come to earth, and they'll be angry. They'll all be very, very angry. So the dragon did stand before the woman who was about to give birth, and I'm arguing that's on the earth right now, okay? And when she may bring forth her child, he may devour, and she brought forth a male child. I'm saying like King David, and I'm saying that this will be a physical birth on the earth. You'll see something up in the sky, but you'll also see a young baby being born down here. It was about to rule the nations with a rod of iron. We saw that already in Genesis 49. We'll see that in Psalm 2. And here we are in Revelation 12. So, of course, you're seeing it. Caught away with her was the child unto God and his throne. So that's a rapture concept, but it's an individual rapture concept for this King David person. It is not. There is no pre-trib rapture. Sorry, just deal with it. And the woman did flee to the wilderness. This is the second Exodus, literal again, where she hath a place made ready from God, and there they may nourish her days 1,260. So 3.5 years. So once again, that's Revelation 12, 1 through 6. I see the literal nature in there. I hope you're starting to see the literal nature. I don't want you to always concentrate on the figurative ideas, because that's what wimps do. And we aren't wimps. We're Bible nerds. We're tough. Okay? So continuing on, this is from David Stern. I love Dr. David Stern. He is deceased now. He was my hero. Not for his translation, because when I'm in the literal Greek, he's translating concepts, not literal words, but excellent on the concept. He was a Jew. And he thought like an Orthodox Jew. And that's what I do too. That's what I do that's different for you than the other people that are, jumping on YouTube. So the Revelation sign, the woman is not Miriam, Yeshua's mother, but Israel, and specifically Zion. I'll show you the verse in a second from Isaiah 66 in its normal sense. The Jewish people, because the imagery is from Isaiah 66, 7 through 10. And also you can look at Isaiah 26:17 and Micah 4:10, because in verse 17 it cannot be extended Israel, that concept which includes Gentile Christians, okay, from every tribe. So back in chapter 12, verse 4 of Revelation, you'll see that specifically he says from every tribe of the sons of Israel. That's not the case here. This is just Judah, just Israel with the Judeans. Okay, although Israel is on earth, Yochanan sees her in heaven, symbolizing the fact that God protects and preserves the Jews. This is made more explicit in verse 6 and 13 through 16. Moreover, Michael is Israel's angelic protector. You'll see that throughout the Bible, especially from Daniel. And so you have to realize that Michael's going to be involved in this fight because there is a Judean king being birthed. There is an obvious resemblance between the woman and the heavenly Jerusalem, which is later on. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so the great red dragon. We could take this literally. We know that the dragon, called the devil and Satan and all these different monikers that he has, we know it's the Satan. We know he's real. We know that he is going to be embarrassed as we move past the midpoint of Revelation, especially when he's cast to the earth. He's going to be embarrassed. And as a narcissist, they hate to be embarrassed. They have this narcissistic shame, and it really ticks them off. So the dragon is Satan, according to Dr. David Stern. I totally agree with him. Take it literally. The adversary. Its 7 heads and 10 horns also equate with the 4th beast of Daniel 7:7. Absolutely, it works forward like that too. Although a lot of things come out of that 4th beast of Daniel 7:7. So he stood in front of the woman opposing Yeshua, ready to devour whatever this child happens to be at the moment it was to be born. Okay, the stars, he's saying they're possibly natural stars, they're possibly angels who rebelled with Satan against God. Okay, sure. Yeah, I see that too. So there can be, you can still be literal and be stars and angels. It could still be literal. Okay, and that comes from Job 2, where the morning stars sang. So we assume they're angels. Angels sing. Okay, now continuing on, Stern starts to parse at this point in time. The male child, well, he compares Isaiah 66:7, and I'll show you that in just a slide or two here. Who will rule the nations with a staff of iron? It plays through the whole Bible. The phrase is from Psalm 2, yes, I'll show you that. And it's entirely about the Messiah, but there's also David. He ruled with a scepter of iron, and also there will be a Davidic-like boy born that will rule alongside Yeshua. Yeshua will be the ultimate Mashiach, but there will be a human person. I'll try to show you the verse, and hopefully it'll make sense. Whether favoring literal or figurative interpretation of the book of Revelation, nearly all commentators agree that these verses depict the birth of Yeshua, the Messiah, and his ascension to heaven after being resurrected. But they're all wrong. Why did you cite them, Dr. Stern? They're all wrong. This means the Revelation is simply not a presentation of future events in chronological order, since this passage flashes back to past history. You can tell I'm just lip syncing this. I don't agree. I don't agree with these commentators, nearly all of them, that think that this is past and future, and we need to parse everything out. No, it's literal. It's all forward. There will be a young baby born. Get ready for it. Okay. Let's look at the rod of iron, which is Psalm 2, 8, and 9. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your inheritance. The whole wide world will be your possession. You will break them with an iron rod, shatter them like a clay pot. Messiah, definitely. King David, at the end days, yes, absolutely. Then Isaiah 66. This is really interesting, and so you're going to see the Zion phraseology. So before going into labor, she gave birth. Before her pains came, she delivered a male child, man child. Who ever heard of such a thing? Who has ever seen such things? Is a country born in one day? Israel. Is a nation brought forth all at once? Israel. As soon as Zion went into labor, so I'm going to argue it's specifically Zion, she brought forth her children. So you could take that literally. Israel became a nation state, and so now she's going to birth another baby at some point in time. So don't look at the figurative answers, because just because you don't like what is going on, say in Ezekiel coming up here, doesn't mean that it becomes figurative. That's just your way of parsing things out. Okay? And don't. It's literal. You can take it literally. So then he brought me back by the way of the outer gate of the sanctuary, the one facing east, and it was shut. Adonai said to me, this gate will remain shut. It will not be opened, and no one will go through it, because Adonai, the God of Israel, that means it has to be Yeshua, the Mashiach, has gone through it. So literally, Yeshua went through that. That means it was sealed after that, and now really no one else can go through it. Therefore, it is to be kept shut. Only the prince. This in this case is referring to the prince Yeshua, since he is the prince, he is the Mashiach, is to sit there to eat his meal before Adonai. He is to enter through the vestibule of the gate and leave the same way. Ezekiel 44, 1 through 3. Not a problem. That is Yeshua. Give it up. It's Yeshua. But it's not figurative. It's literal. Yeshua. On the other hand, this is literal too. There to teach my people the difference between the holy and the common, and enable them to distinguish between clean and unclean. And in Hebrew, we would call that tahor is clean, tameh is unclean. That's biblical all the way through. You're arguing Moses with Deuteronomy and 4, 5, 6, all of those things. Clean, unclean is very specific in there. Okay, they are to be judges in controversies, and they are to render decisions in keeping with my rulings at all my designated festivals. That's Moedim. He's going to reintroduce these. Yeshua will. They're to keep my laws and regulations. They're to keep my Sabbaths holy. That's what the millennium is all about, is keeping laws, regulations, Sabbaths holy. They're not to come to any dead person, because that causes corpse contamination, because this would make them tameh. You want to be tahor so that you can fellowship with others that are tahor, clean. However, for father, mother, son, daughter, brother, sister, who has no husband, they may make themselves unclean. Ezekiel 44, 23 through 25. Now let's get to the final section, which outlines that this man-child is probably going to be a King David type of a man. So this is Ezekiel again, 45 now, 21 through 25. And so I would recommend to you that you read all of Ezekiel 40 through 48, and you'll see first it starts out with, that the buildings, the concept of the millennium, and then it goes into the specific activities and things like that. And this is an activity where this is not Yeshua, and I'll tell you why. On the 14th day of the first month, which is Pesach, you are to have the Pesach, the Passover. A feast of 7 days long, matzah will be eaten on the day the prince, the man-child, will provide for himself. Here's the problem. I highlighted in maroon for himself, because Yeshua is sinless, and he wouldn't provide an offering for himself because that would be pointless. Sinless people don't need to provide that. That means that this is the prince, the man-child, is a human being. So he provides for himself and all the people of the land. The young bull is a sin offering. On the 7 days of the feast, he is to provide a burnt offering for Adonai. 7 young bulls and 7 rams without defect for the 7 days, and the male goat daily as a sin offering. He is to provide a grain offering as a bushel, offering a bushel of grain for the young bull, and a bushel for the ram, and each bushel of grain, and a gallon of olive oil on the 15th day of the 7th month. So you're in Tishri now, and you're leading up to Sukkot, and that's what they're describing during the feast of Sukkot. He is to do the same thing for those 7 days in regard to sin offerings. Yeshua has no sin. There are no sin offerings for him. Burnt offerings, grain offerings, and olive oil, Ezekiel 45, 21 through 25. What I'm getting at is this is a different person. Different. Yeshua is Yeshua. He doesn't need to do anything for himself for sin offerings or any of those types of things. And for those of you that think you're re-crucifying Christ by reintroducing the sacrificial system, sorry, it's coming back. Get used to it. Get ready for it. It's coming back. And it will be the holy, because that's how it's described in Daniel 9. So where are we right now? We're in the birth pangs. We're not in the tribulation. I'm saying that before you go into the tribulation, the first 3.5 years, you will see the 2 witnesses show up, and they will start the sacrificial system with the red heifer. Then you will go into the great tribulation for the last 3.5 years. The man-child would be birthed at about the midpoint there, and then he would be caught up to heaven, but then he would come back down with Yeshua and rule, and he would be a King David type of a person. So the man-child will factor in. We probably won't be able to meet him, but unless you get through, then you'll be able to meet him, and it'll be amazing because we'll have someone that rules alongside. There will be priests alongside Yeshua, but also the man-child, a Davidic type leader. So you work on you work on your family, you work on your loved ones. He's coming back on a Rosh Hashana, a Yom Kippur, or a Sukkot of a future year. You need clean garments. You can't be naked. You have to have white garments that are clean. Those are the acts of Messiah that we have to do. So it's a wedding. Show up for the wedding, people. Show up, okay? Get your garments clean. Be blessed. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you again hopefully next week. Bye-bye. Be blessed.